Okay, hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I don't know why I did that. I hope you guys are well. If you haven't been outside today, just pause the fuck out of this video and just go take a nice deep breath of air. Grab a glass of water, plop yourself down because we are in for a goddamn ride. Today we are remaking, or breaking down a remake I have done already, of Ramzoid's Red Beams, but I only used kick main. I have been a fan of Ramzoid for a while now, and if you've been watching his videos, you know Kick Main. It's like an essential character in Ramzoid lore. He recently released a sample pack, which I'm gonna have the link for in the description, which includes Kick Main. Naturally, I copped the fuck out of it and thought, man, I should definitely try and make a remake of one of Ramzoid's songs. I have all of his sounds, you know, like Ramzoid's a crazy producer, it would be a great learning experience. And then I thought it would be funny to like only use Kick Main. And it was so much harder than I thought it was gonna be. This is just gonna be like a summary video on like the main points and main sound design techniques I used. If you have any questions on any specific things or any topics you want me to go further into, drop one of those comments or slide up into the Discord. Everybody's super helpful in there and quite knowledgeable because I do some dumb shit sometimes and some people in there are like much more qualified to talk about this shit. One of those people is Laghima, so he actually has his own YouTube channel in which he goes into depth with music theory and he's really knowledgeable about engineering. He actually made a music theory breakdown of Winter, so I'll leave a link to that in the description. But this man has got us our first sponsor, which is bananas, because it's none other than fucking DistroKid. I was gonna, and I still am gonna make a more in-depth video breaking down my upload process where we'll really like go into how I use DistroKid, but they decided to sponsor this video, so I'm just gonna give you a quick rundown of what it is and why you should use it. I've had a lot of people, musicians and just friends and family, ask me how I get my music onto Spotify. That is through a distributor, and that distributor has been DistroKid. I have been using DistroKid for almost 2 years now for all of my music. There's a lot of different distributors on the market right now for getting your music onto Spotify, but the three big ones are basically DistroKid, TuneCore, and CD Baby. And DistroKid is unequivocally the best one. Not only is it overflowing with features such as like it puts you on every marketplace, including TikTok and Instagram stories. It lets you like do the synced lyrics thing, so like you see the lyrics playing on the Instagram stories, like you can sync up the lyrics yourself. It's epic. It's like the cheapest one out of all three. TuneCore and CD Baby make you pay per upload, so like you upload a song, you gotta pay like a yearly price for that shit. Ridiculous. DistroKid, its lowest tier, you only have to pay $20 a year to upload unlimited music. So look, if you're thinking of uploading music to Spotify, there's a couple other smaller distributors, especially local distributors, that I think are really worth looking into depending on where you live. But in terms of like the big distributors, like Spotify has DistroKid under its preferred distributors. It's not only like amazing feature-wise, but financially it's like the clear option. So if you want to use DistroKid, I got a VIP link in the description, which is distrokid.com/VIP/buttholes, which is like, so if you sign up using that, you get 7% off your first year, and also you're supporting me because they have decided to send me $5 every time somebody uses the link, so like go crazy. With that all said, let's get into this. I'm so excited to show y'all how this happened. So the first thing I started with was that synth lead that you hear at the beginning of the song.
Laser eyes, tunnel vision, see you across the room and you want none of my business.
So you can kind of hear there's like nice little keys in the background. To me, it sounded like three different things. So there was like a bass, some keys, and like a synth lead on top. So I started with what I thought was the synth lead. So the way I did this in a lot of these tonal things was I went to my little music library. I pulled up folders. The way you get your own folders in this Logic thing is you just open a new Finder window and drag and drop them into this media section. Fucking huge help in Logic. Went to that Ramzoid drum kit volume 1. We went to them MF kicks, and we got that kick main. Ooh! And then you just drag and drop it into Q Sampler. What you get when you open up Q Sampler is this sample by itself, and then what you can do is you can zoom in and choose a loop section so you can see it loop forward. So that what happens is that it'll just loop through this and it turns into its own sort of oscillator. So without any of the plugins, this is what that sounded like. kind of a vibe. And then basically we went through adding plugins. So the first thing I did was some subtractive EQ. I just shaved off like hella high end, hella low end, and then multi-press to really like calm down the mids. There's like a lot of resonance in this oscillator sound that Kick Main was making. I just put some like pretty heavy limiting on certain frequency ranges so that way they wouldn't get too exaggerated. So if I'm only playing one, that's fine. It's not really doing any compression. But then if I play 2, 3, like it compounds, and so there's 2 notes playing with this lead just to like give it more tonal variation, and so I just kind of wanted to calm those areas down. So that's the multipressor, and then I just chucked some widening on that bad boy with the Serum Effects rack, which I highly recommend, and some reverb. No chorus, but just like a bunch of dimension. It's like a controlled delay. It takes the signal and then puts 2 delays in the stereo field. The size is how delayed, like how long each delay is, and the mix is how loud those delays are, and then just some like a bucket of reverb to like really make it interesting and feel like the sound's kind of evolving. So this is what that sounds like. So that's already sounding pretty snazzy. Then I threw some chorus on it to kind of make it a little bit more wavy and wide. And then just some more EQ to finish tone shaping it. I really hate this like 3K range. Just cut it out, but I wanted more highs, and so now it sounds like this. And that lead was the basis for the keys, which came next. So the way I made these keys was I grabbed like a 4-bar sample of this synth playing, and then I put it into Alchemy. You can just drag and drop it in or choose import audio when you do that. So this is just like the stock default with like my own sample in it. I just took off the delay and then added a little bit more reverb. So this is basically what the keys sound like by themselves. The real hard part with making something sound like a keyboard is making it feel like there's a hammer hitting the string of like a piano. I actually saw Ramzoid do this with an 808 first. That's kind of like where I got the idea from. Basically just made like a little envelope to adjust the tone. Spikes right at the beginning, and it only goes 3 semitones up. It just goes like pew, and it just kind of sounds like, so it makes that little like pew at the beginning, and then on top of that just adjusting the cutoff of the filter to make the sound evolve and ring out. So you can hear it kind of die off as a normal piano or keyboard would. To really emphasize that like hammer at the beginning, you can make a volume spike at the top. I ended up not doing that with the keys because I thought it made that first impact a little too harsh, but it's just something to keep in mind if you're trying to design a keyboard. And then we just did some more subtractive EQ, as you can see over here, and then some multi-band compression. Doing a similar thing. It's just cutting off those like mid, and especially the high mids are so aggressive. If I take off the EQ and multi-band, it's like really harsh and annoying, but I chuck them all back on. It's like much softer. The Serum Effects, some more dimension, and some reverb. This chorus isn't a thing, it doesn't exist. And then I just put another layer of a very similar patch, but just an octave lower to give it a more warm, well-rounded sound. And together they sound like this. And then the last part of that first instrumental stack was this bass. Okay, so this bass was awful because I still hate the tone of it. I couldn't get it to not sound like super annoying. So as with that synth lead, I basically did a similar thing and brought the Kick Main sample into the Logic sampler. The first one was Quick Sampler, and this one was just the regular Logic sampler. The reason I brought it into this sampler instead of Quick Sampler is in this sampler you can make glides. Glissando, I think is what it's called, like legato glissando, when it goes like whoop, you know what I'm talking about, 808 glides, goddamn. So basically the same thing, I just found like a section to loop that sounded decent, and that was extremely difficult, and then just did some tuning on top of that. So with the tuner, it sounds like this. Nice and quiet. In this, we just did a little bit of pitch modulation when it hits, just to have like a distinct beginning, and also some filter automation, again, just to make the sound evolve and not be stale. And then we got that bass sound, just some subtractive EQ, just the tone shape, put on the Logic multi-band compressor to clean up the tone. And then I just added some compression to it just to kind of thicken up the sound a little bit. And then I added a little bit of reverb. Again, this is just to kind of make it a little bit more interesting of a sound that evolves instead of just being like that center, like annoying loop of a sample. This compressor then brings in all the gain. Basically what we did here was add like a little bit more compression and then just soft distortion. So just cranked up the makeup until it hit the clipping point and then added some soft distortion, and that's what gives it that buzz. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And then just some cleaning up EQ, tonal stuff to add in those highs back. And that EQ just brings some more grit into it. Cleaning up the low end that doesn't even exist. Can't really hear anything below 30 hertz. It just kind of clogs up your signal. That's kind of air that you feel with like really big speakers. Your headphones don't do a good job of making that wavelength. Now with the bass and the keys and the synth together, this is what it sounds like. I've put an RC20 on the master, so that's that crackly in the background. Once I had the keys, then I could also make the intro, this thing, which is just sampling the keys, pitching them down an octave, and then copy pasting the same thing and then pushing that down another octave. Then on both of those, I put an RC20 onto it and just gave it like some vinyl vibes, some EQ to make it sound even more lo-fi, and then some chorus just to widen that thing up and add a little bit of dance to it. All right, now let's get into the actual beat. The first thing I started working on in the beat was this snare that comes in during the end of the first verse.
Call me if you got some.
In the same way that the tonal stuff was all based off of similar techniques in the way I actually got the sound, the percussion also relied on very similar techniques. Like once I figured out how to do this snare, kind of everything else stemmed from that. Basically how it started was the quick sampler again. I just chucked that kick main sampler in that hoe. I don't think I actually really touched it in there. I just went to the EQ, took out all of the low end. The root key for kick main is G2, but this is being played at G6. So without any of the plugins, it sounds like this. And then we just shaved off all the low end and a little bit of the mids and then a lot of high end, just like the annoying clicky stuff. And then the big thing that goes into this snare and every other percussive part of this beat, besides kick main original of course, was Valhalla Supermassive. I think I saw Andrew Kwong do something like this and I was like, oh, like it could be delays and reverbs. Also it's free. I basically just chose a preset, yo, shout out Aries Carousel, stream Fool's Gold. Played around with these effects as much as possible and got this. Ooh. And now it actually is starting to sound like a clap. So Valhalla Supermassive did everything. Listen to this shit. Turn it off, with it on. Boom, you have a clap. It's ridiculous. This feedback and density is really like what turns it into a reverb or not. So basically a clap is somewhere in between like a really short delay and kind of a little reverby. So for example, if I pull the feedback all the way down, it just like completely goes away, but then I bring it back up, and this is like kind of how long the delays go for. But then for example, if I bring it back up to 100%, it goes bananas. You have like a ton of control over sounds in Supermassive, was just like the point of that demonstration. But then I just do a little bit of compression to make it a little bit more punchy with like a really long attack and a really short release. Brought up the gain as well. A little bit more tone shaping EQ, so just really bring up the highs. It is a clap after all. Then we use an LFO tool. The point of this is just to shape the delay a little bit more because Valhalla Supermassive is great, but it has its limitations in that you can't really shape the wave of the delays. Like it just kind of glides out at a certain rate, whereas with this I can really just have them glide at a certain height and then cut them off instantly. So without the LFO tool it sounds like this, and with it you can just make that sharp. So it still has those delays loud and clear, and then it cuts them off instantly, just a little bit more clappy. And then I pitch shifted a little bit. Logic's pitch shifter has a way of just absolutely destroying sound quality that I kind of wanted instead of just shifting it down a little bit. That came in handy there, although it's absolutely garbage otherwise. And then just a little bit removing the super high end because Ramzoids have this lo-fi feel to it, so just removing the high end really helps with that. So this is without that, and this is with it. Just a little bit more lo-fi vibe to it. And then lastly, we used Fat Effects to just get a little bit of soft saturation in here. I did not know about this plugin, and it's definitely like a stock plugin essential. And if you're having trouble finding distortions that you really like, this has a nice variety of distortions that you can mix together and make new stuff. But I just wanted like a little bit of saturation just to clip it off at the top and give it a little bit of a chunk. And the final product was this. Bow. That's a clap. And then probably the most complicated part of this was dragging and dropping kick main. Hell yeah. Just because Valhalla Supermassive did a lot of the heavy lifting for the rest of the percussion stuff, I'm not really gonna go into the rest of their chains. It mainly just had to do with playing around with Valhalla Supermassive settings and then adding delays and reverbs as were needed. It was more of a time sink than like an enlightening moment of engineering. But the last thing that kind of combines percussion and tone is the 808. Basically what I did was I dragged in the kick into Serum. What it looks like when you drag the kick in is it gives you this option to do pitch 0 snap or pitch follow. I chose pitch 0 snap. What that does is it makes sure it snaps like this 0 point to that 0 point, so that way you're not getting any like weird clicky sounds when it uses the waveform as an oscillator. And the cool thing is you can choose between all these waveforms and like oscillate between them. I don't really understand how they build this waveform. Anybody who knows, please drop that in the comments. But this is the waveform we went with. The final 808 sounds like this. And without any of the effects on there, it sounds like this. I cheated a little bit, alright? I added a sub, so it's not like completely kick main by itself, but the main tonal sound of it is from this oscillator. Without the sub, it sounds like this. So all that high end from the Ramzoid 808 comes from the kick main still, and then the sub just gives it some beef. Ooh! To give it the classic 808 vibe, basically there were three things we had to do. One was give it a filter sweep, so it goes like BEOW, kinda. It's almost like a laser beam, but like a really low one. Make it sound like an 808, so it has punch at the beginning and then it kind of decays off into nothingness. And then we needed beefiness. So to get the first kick, what we used was a similar technique that we used on the keys. So we used a really short envelope 2, on the semitones. So that's just pulled to half, so it goes up 45 semitones. Super quick. As you can see, the attack's 10 milliseconds and the decay's 45 milliseconds, so it goes bop like way under a second. So that pitch automation is just a flick. And then we have envelope 3, which is modulating the cutoff, the sub noise, that sine wave, and then the actual noise level to just add some high-end buzz to the top of it. So when I play a note, you can watch that little blue thing follow through the wave. So without all the plugins, it sounds like this. But then we added in a channel EQ, which basically just sweeps out some of those highs, takes out the muddy, like nasty end of the low, and cleans it up in this kind of muddy frequency of 100 to 200, even some 300 area. Turned on the compressor, and basically what I wanted to do here was maintain the punch. It's a medium tack, medium to fast release, a pretty small ratio with a high need. I wanted the compressor to exist and be felt, but not be super aggressive. All of the distortion and that like disgustingness comes from the hard distortion. It's just obliterating it. And on top of that, I added some more with this fat effects. We just used some soft saturation and some of this very drive. So what this sounds like, and that's like that real nasty, young, good. And then some more EQ just to clean it up entirely. So just boosting the sub end of it, again cleaning up the mud, and then removing all the highs I don't want. And so that's like a real nice, like rolling thunder type of fucking murderous 808. And then this compressor is just sidechained to the kick. So when the kick hits, it cuts out, but just a little bit. I'm not actually sure if Ramzoid sidechains his kicks. I think Ableton is a lot more forgiving with like clipping on export. Like Logic sounds really shit if you're clipping on export. So I just wanted to make it a little bit more manageable. So the point of this compressor was less for an audible difference and more for just like the computer's metering and levels wouldn't freak out with all of that low end, because if I turn this off, you can kind of hear it's just a click. Keep it on, the click goes away. Okay, and that's the beat. If you have any further questions on any of those topics or any specific sounds that I made that you hear in the beat, a lot of them just came from picking apart the videos that Ramzoid made, and a lot of them just came from like messing around with my ears. And that's it. That's how I remade Ramzoid's Red Beams only using kick main. A useless contribution to music. I hope that y'all learned something from the process. I normally hate doing sound design except for things like this, so this was like a crazy learning experience for just synthesis and like the ins and outs of what makes like a clap a clap. So that was really cool, and I'm hoping that some of that insight like transferred through osmosis into you guys. But yeah, make sure you listen to the original and go stream Castle, Ramzoid's new song. It's awesome. Also stream Falling by me and Monto. That's it. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. And you learned something from this video. If you didn't go outside of the beginning of this video, close that fucking lappy and take a hike. Go get some fresh air. Get yourself some water. Stay hydrated. Feel free to hit up the Discord if you need anything. Yeah, have a great day. I'm Bryce, and thanks for being part of my life. Ooh, also, I almost forgot.
Today I woke up with all my shit packed in 7 different boxes. Is this really it? Is this all that there is to me? I know I said